Muses of Mythology is a spoiler-heavy podcast.
That's an understatement.
We're going to discuss not just the events of this book, but the Rhineverse as a whole, and really anything that we feel is relevant. You can find full spoiler warnings in the show notes. Thank you all so much for listening. We will be back into your ears. Into gross.
I'm going to get in your ears.
No!
I'm getting in there. I'm eating your earwax.
Well, that is the intro. Welcome to Muses of Mythology, a podcast where we explore how ancient myths become part of modern pop culture through the lens of Rick Riordan's Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard. This is Story 89, Vanaheimr. I'm your co-host and podcasting muse, Darien Smart. Joining me is my co-host and brother, DJ.
How's everybody doing today? I'm DJ the Muse, and you know, we've been doing Magnus Chase for quite a few episodes now, and I still expect you to say Percy Jackson and the Olympians almost every time, every single time.
Every time. To be fair, I did it for 3 years.
Yeah, so it's still like
only
embedded.
been like, and then this is only going to go through the end of this year, and then we are flipping to something else.
Right, Spotty?
Yeah, DJ, that sounds like a you problem. Let's go to the garden. We are, in another episode, we are going to be combining some things. This is going to be under the umbrella of Vanaheim, or Vanaheimr.
Okay.
DJ, what, off the top of your head, do you know about Vanaheim from the Magnus Chase books?
It's the realm of the Vanir.
Absolutely.
It's very woody.
Yeah.
Like a forest. What the fuck is the name of the field where those warriors go?
Folkvangr.
Folkvangr's there.
Yep.
Freya's there.
Yep.
Frey's there?
Yes. Question mark, question mark, question mark.
We never see him in Vanaheim.
No, and he's considered both. We'll get to that.
Yeah. That's about it. I mean, there's like dragons there. That Halfborn just fucking kills.
Yeah.
Easily.
We really have.
Handily.
There are only like 2 scenes in Vanaheim. The first is when they're trying to get to Nidavellir, and Freya sends them on a detour so she can send Blitz on an errand. And then the second time is in the Nine from the Nine when Halfborn is working on an arts and crafts project. And as you said, needs to go there to kill some dragons.
He's trying to get his girlfriend back.
No, he's not trying to make it up to her or anything. They're great. This is just an anniversary present. Yeah, they're not.
They were broken up in the last book. That's right.
Yes, and then they got back together. And so that one's tricky because it does open with Mallory like being pissed, but that's maybe because he's trying to hide it from her and won't let her in his room.
Yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah.
It's like, we're supposed to spend today together. It's our fucking anniversary. You're not letting me in.
But it's also not yet.
I don't know.
That's what's weird.
It's supposed to happen all in a day.
Because
that's the storytelling function is Thor. He's running 10,000 miles in a day.
Yeah. Or he's just running 10,000 miles. I guess
in a day. It was in 24 hours.
In 24 hours?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because that seems wild, because I don't think any human could actually do it.
No, it's Thor.
Yeah. But if it's the
running
challenge to get on a Midgard show, you have to run that many miles. But that wouldn't be reasonable for a human being to do. And it's not like it's a thing designed for Thor.
I wonder if Thor got it wrong.
Could have been, because he didn't turn on his
honestly,
pedometer.
10K.
Probably just a 10K. Yeah, just running around a 10K.
It was supposed to be a 10K, and he read that as 10,000 miles.
Probably, yeah.
Instead of being 10 kilometers.
Yeah, because everything does feel like it happens in the day, except for the space between... Because Mallory leaves Halfborn's room upset because he's being a jerk. Probably because he's trying to hide the thing from her, and he's just not being chill about it. Yeah. And then Then we go to the Halfborn one where he does the dragons, and then the Alex one, it opens with him covering, but then it opens with him watching Mallory and Halfborn kissing because Mallory's happy with the gift. But it was implied that Halfborn wasn't going to give it to her until their anniversary, which wasn't some time out.
Maybe it was the next day. Because it's 24 hours, right? He could have started the run in like the afternoon.
Yeah, give or take. This is not what this episode is about. So most of what we get about Vanaheim is really directly in Folkvangr.
Is it Vanaheim or Vanheim?
Vanaheimr.
Okay.
Which literally translates to home of the Vanir.
Let's go.
Now, DJ, you'll love this. Do you want to guess how many times it's mentioned in the Eddas?
Once.
Twice, but once per each.
Crazy.
It is, in the Edda, it is mentioned in Vafthrundir sayings, which is, Odin paying dress up and challenging a giant to a trivia game. In this one, it is Odin is challenging the giant. Tell me this 10th thing. He says, tell me this first thing, tell me the second thing, tell me this 10th thing, since all the fate of the gods you, Vafthrundir, know. From where Norn came to the sons of the Aesir, he rules over very many temples and sanctuaries, and he was not raised among the Aesir. Vafthrundir said, in Vanaheim the wise powers made him, and gave him as hostage to the gods. At the doom of men he will come back home among the wise Vanir.
So, Norn is an Aesir.
Yes, but he was born and raised among the Vanir.
Yeah.
And so the second time, well, I guess the other place we see the specific term Vanaheimr mentioned is in the Prose Edda, where it is mentioned in the Gylfaginning classic, specifically in the chapter 23 of Njord and Skadi, where he's listing off different gods. The third god named Njord, he lives in the heavens at the place called Noatun, enclosure for ships. He rules over the movement of the winds, and he can calm sea and fire. One invokes him I'm getting a little ahead of ourselves, so we're going to talk about Njord in this episode. Mm-hmm. But it specifically mentions, when it mentions Vanaheim, it mentions how he is not of the Aesir family. He was brought up in Vanaheim, but the Vanir sent him as a hostage to the gods. In return, they took a hostage from the Aesir called Honir, and his exchange contributed to the peace between the gods and the Vanir. With only those two mentions of Vanaheim, I learned there's a little bit of controversy in the scholar world regarding Vanaheim and the Vanir.
Okay.
And a lot of it is, but is the scholar Rudolf Simek, who we've talked about in the past. He's a professor and the chair of ancient German and Nordic studies at the University of Bonn. Mm-hmm. He says that Snorri, quote, unquestionably created the word the word Vanaheim, as a counterpart to Asgard.
Okay.
Now, the thing about this is it doesn't really track, since that term is also found in the Poetic Edda and that the first poem we mentioned. And this did lead me into a rabbit hole of trying to figure out, which one was recorded first? Because we have the exact date of when Snorri wrote down, roughly we have the year he did. We both know these both came from the 13th century, written in the 1200s. Okay. But we actually don't know exactly when the Poetic Edda was recorded. So it is, because someone wrote it down, and then it was just gone for 300 years, right? So it's a little bit could be before, could be after. They're just too similar to... It is entirely possible that Snorri could have been the one to propose this term. It is totally possible that maybe the reason it's in the Poetic Edda is because the person who recorded that version of the poem was familiar with Snorri's work and used the same word. Is it likely? No, but I can't rule it out. Okay. But that's just something.
Where else would the Vanir go, though?
Exactly. Well, put in that. Let's circle back. Speaking of the Vanir, so that's what we know of Vanaheim. All we know about Vanaheim, it's where the Vanir live.
Yeah.
So in the Norse mythology, and this is really important, not important, but it's very interesting because it's one of the things that sets Norse mythology apart from other major popular well-known mythologies, is that there are two families of gods. Mm-hmm. The Aesir and the Vanir. And I just want to quote Carter from the Seaweed Brain Podcast when this got mentioned while they were discussing the Kane Chronicles and the Egyptian gods and how all of the gods are brother-sister of each other. Mm-hmm. Carter made a comment about how, but that didn't fly with the Norse. They just completely invented a completely new family of gods so they could marry into that and avoid the incest thing. And I just was like, I never thought about that. But yeah, because the Greek Olympians are all siblings or nieces and nephews or cousins, and the Egyptian all like that. And those are the three that I know. I can't speak for others. I don't know enough about them, but I did find that very interesting, that it was just the idea of incest was so like, no, we don't do that. Because it was like the royals did that. In Egyptian, the idea of preserving that royal bloodline could be why these places, like incest was not okay, but the gods did it and the royals did it, but ordinary people weren't going to do that. That was, you don't do that. Yeah. We're not going to have that. No. Because on something, it's not just like, hey, gross, but also like that's actually bad for the continuement of the human race.
It wasn't that well known of that fact.
No, but
too much back then.
It wasn't. But the fact that it was still considered a taboo way back then does indicate like an understanding that like there is a reason this is viscerally considered wrong, which is fascinating. But not what this podcast is about. No. This podcast is about how the Norse said no, and we have the Vanir. They are really associated with wisdom, fertility, and foresight. Specifically, foresight meaning they can see into the future. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Aesir are explicitly the warlike gods, right? The ones that are going out and fighting and conquering and things like that. The Vanir seem to represent a little bit more of like times of peace. Mm-hmm. Like think of it as like if the Aesir are akin to like Athena and Ares, then the Vanir are Hestia. They are home and hearth. Mm-hmm. Kind of, not exactly 1-to-1, but like if you're doing like a vibe, that's the thing. Now, I really tried to find like a good list of who we considered the Vanir. Just everyone has conflicting sources on that front. One place I found was adamant that Heimdall is considered one of the Vanir because of his sight. But then when you actually read that passage where it's listed, what it actually says is he has the foresight like that of the Vanir. But that wording
distinctly, he's not Vanir.
Yes,
but he
can do the thing they can do, but not because he is Vanir. A lot of it also has the fact to do with, like I said, they have this other family that they marry into. So, like I said, Njord was born with the Vanir, but he's largely considered an Aesir, and his children, Freyr and Freya, like they would think, well, they would be Aesir too then if they were born after their father left, but maybe they weren't. But Freyr's pretty tight with the Aesir, and he's usually on lineup, but he's also over here. But Freya has Folkvangr, which is in Van, so it's all kind of wacky. Mm-hmm. But I did find a list, and I am going to share it with you. Okay. So, like I said, at the top, the most well-known, the ones that we can be like, definitely these three are directly associated with the Vanir: Njord, Freya, and Freyr. We'll do more on them later. There's a deity called Nerthias, who is possibly the first wife of Njord, who would have been the goddess of fertility, earth, and harvest. More on her later. Okay. There is Ord, the husband of Freya, whose name apparently translates to divine madness. Okay. Who's to say? There's Nas, daughter of Freya and Ord, who is the goddess of desire. Gersemi, also daughter of Freya and Ord. Skirnir, who's a servant of Frey. I found deity of many roles. Now, we'll talk about this dude later. I just included him on this list because I just found this list, but I will also say, like, I'm not sure this dude is a god.
This guy might not actually be
a god. He is real. He's mentioned in the poems.
Okay. But he could be just like a giant.
He's a servant. And so it's like, yeah, gods would have servants, but usually if God has a servant, they're typically a mortal dude, right? But maybe he's also, anyway, it's very interesting that distinct difference of Norse and Greek, where it's like if this was Norse, like we would absolutely know if this figure was a mortal or a deity. Yeah. We also have that with Kvasir, who I'm going to touch a little bit more on later. He was listed as a god of wisdom and being born of both the Aesir and the Vanir, but I'm not actually sure if he was a god.
Another servant.
Or just a dude. Just a really, really cool dude. Pinning him. More on that later. Vana, or possibly Nana, is just, mentioned as Vana of the Vanaheimr. I think this is Baldur's wife. Okay. Because Baldur's wife is Nana, who dies of grief when he is killed. Yeah. So, like I said, a lot of them seem to have just married in, which is actually what English folklorist Hilda Ellis Davidson has on the topic. Her theory is that all of the wives of the Aesir were goddesses of the Vanir. Yeah, like we mentioned earlier, like you'll notice Frigg isn't mentioned in this list, but as we know from her being concerned about her son dying and having that kind of foresight, and what Rick Riordan plays with her literally seeing the future. And foresight, like I said, is a big superpower of the Vanir. Mm-hmm. So kind of how that distinguishes. Now, many of them could have also been children of the Jotnar. Mm-hmm. So it's possible that's not like everyone, but that's just an interesting theory of like trying to place why they have these two distinct families. I know usually when we do this, I'm like, here's all the different places they're cited in the scripts, right? I'm not going to do that because the term Vanir is cited a lot. Mm-hmm. Like they just use it. They just use it. They just come up often because they're another group.
Yeah.
It'd be like when we get to Thor, I'm not going to read every time Thor has said. Like, we'll break it down. We'll do a highlight reel of some cool or interesting Thor things. But, like, I'll make it a precedent now. You're not getting every single quote from me, gang. Get your own copy of the Eddas if you want to read every time the word Vanir is said.
We did that in the past, but that's also because...
Sometimes they're only said 6 times.
4 times, yeah.
But there are a couple things that I want to say. So, the fact that the Vanir aren't just like another family, but they are a distinct culture from the Aesir. And we can extrapolate this from the poem, which translates to Allwise's sayings. A dwarf named Allwise, or Alvise, he wants to marry one of Thor's daughters. And Thor's like, well, I'll have to test you to see how wise you are. Classic wisdom structure, right? Well, what is this and what is this and what can you tell me about this? Except in this poem, Thor is specifically stalling for time, waiting for the sun to come up, because it'll turn this guy to stone. Problem solved. But...
Fucking bastard.
Yeah, I don't know why he couldn't just say, no, I will not allow you to marry my daughter. But, well, okay. Except, maybe I'll talk about this later. I just opened to the poem, and one of the second stanzas, Thor is saying, what sort of creature is that? Why so pale around their nostrils? Did you spend the night with a corpse? The image of an ogre you seem to be. You were not born for a bride.
Dude, you are so ugly. No one's ever going to love you.
That's, yeah.
You have a face not even a mother could love,
It's
bro.
so brutal. Like, it just seems really brutal. But this particular structure of the poem, whereas the one we just cited with Odin the giant is citing off, like, facts. This one is a little bit more like, Alvise is more like trying to show off his poetic skill. Because there's just a lot of, like keening and strong, like, poetic devices in this one. Like, this dude's just kind of showing off how he's memorized the thesaurus, kind of. So one of these things Thor asks him is, tell me this, all-wise, I reckon, dwarf, that you have wisdom about all beings. What is the earth called, which lies in front of men in each world? Earth it is called among men, and ground by the Aesir, and the Vanir call it ways, giant splendid green, elves the growing one, and powers above call it loam. And this continues on, and each time he does give like what each place, each world calls it, and specifically for the Vanir, they call heaven, weaver of winds, cloud, kites of the wind, calm, hush of the winds, sea, the wave, fire, wildfire, wood, the wand, seed, growth, and ale, the foaming.
Okay.
So I mentioned that because, one, I just kind of think I love this poem.
It's just a lot of fun.
It's just a lot of fun. Like, it's very silly.
Heck yeah.
Like, I just liked it, and I like the fact that Thor's just, and what do they call wood in all the places? Yeah, And what about the sea? Yeah, totally. And he's just, like, looking at the horizon.
Just watching the sun go down and...
was trying to see, like, the sun come up.
That's right.
Yeah. Just like, It's like Max in Hocus Pocus being like, I know about daylight savings. And car lights flash on. Just trick him into thinking it's sunrise.
Nice.
Have you seen Hocus Pocus?
No.
DJ?
Not once.
We've lived together for more than 1 year now. I gotta watch Hocus Pocus next year. I think you like it. It's fun.
Yeah, probably.
It's wild. They murder a child at the beginning of that movie. Nice. It opens with them killing on screen. We see her death. So anyway, I wanted to highlight this poem in particular when doing one to cite the Vanir, because, like I said, it's a very clear distinction of the Aesir and the Vanir are different cultures, right? They have different terms for things. The other time the Vanir is often mentioned is in the Aesir-Vanir War.
Okay.
Did you remember anything about this? It's kind of referenced in the Magnus Chase books.
That it was crazy, and Norn was sent to the Aesir as pretty much just being like, all right, this is the piece.
Yeah. That's like I said, the Norn is only mentioned in the both times Norn is like mentioned. It is very specifically focused. Oh, not both times. He's mentioned other places, but like the major thing about him is like he was used to end this war.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that war.
Okay.
We don't have a lot of from it, but it is one of the first things in the Seer's prophecy, which is considered one of the most important poems that we have for understanding the foundation or just the general concepts that would have been part of like Norse mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes like this. She remembers the first war in the world. When they struck Gulfig with spears in the High One's hall, they burned her. 3 times they burned her. 3 times she was reborn. Over and over, yet she lives still. Bright One they call her. Whenever she came to houses, the seer with pleasing prophecies, she practiced spirit magic. She knew seed. Seed she reformed as she liked. She was always a wicked woman's favorite. Then all the powers went to the throne of fate, synchronistic gods, and they considered this: whether the Aesir should yield the tribute, or whether all the gods should share sacrificial feasts. Odin hurled his spear, it sped into the host. That was war still, and the first in the world. The wooden rampart of the Aesir stronghold was wrecked. The Vanir, with a war spell, kept on trampling the plain. It kind of goes on a little bit of the ways where it's just these 2 rival gods went to war.
Yeah.
And the exact reasoning is a little unclear, although the first thing that starts with is that figure who's mentioned, Gulfig, being killed 3 times. And when they say it's High One's hall, that High One we know is Odin.
Mm-hmm.
So this happened in Valhalla. And why they wanted to kill her is kind of unclear. Well, completely unclear. And how this led to the War of the Vanir, we just kind of left to assume that she must be one of the Vanir. Like, she's listed in that list I gave earlier as one of her. Her name literally means, like, gold, golden. Gold means gold. And so sometimes she's the personification of gold itself.
Okay.
And once she becomes Heidir, which is Bright One, it's not so similar. It's kind of like she's the same. She starts practicing that kind of magic, that seed, which is so notorious, related to the Vanir, specifically related to Freya. So some scholars have a theory, specifically Gabriel Turl-Pietz, Rudolf Skumek, and John Lindau, suspect that this figure of Gelfvig might actually be Freya.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why she starts practicing that magic, how she gained that power. And her treatment is what led to the war. Later on, they mention Odd's girl, and Odd is Freya's husband. So the idea being, like, the reason they went to war is because this very important deity of the Vanir was treated poorly in the house of the Aesir for XYZ reasons. Some scholars believe that it's actually the fact that she was introducing gold, or the fact that she had this kind of magic that the Aesir didn't like and this tried to kill her. It's all kind of muddled. We don't know. We're obviously missing a lot of pieces as to what this meant.
Aesir being like, we can't use this kind of fucking metal in our weapons.
This is garbage. Get red copper or nothing. Yeah, probably. It is one of those things where it's like there may have been more cultural understanding, like an unspoken understanding in these stories when they were, again, a living tradition. Maybe that it was meant to once upon a time reference. These are like general theories that when I was doing researching, like maybe the Vanir were actually deities practiced by like an older tradition, and that the Asgardians, I keep saying Asgardians, and that is because of Marvel. The Aesir kind of usurped them in the same way that the Titans were eventually usurped by the Olympians. Okay. The hiccup with this one is that most of the Vanir, saving just Freyr, are not known in other regions. And if they were related to an older like system of deities, we would find like their proto versions in other cultures, because that's how that works. That's how you see that.
Yeah.
And we don't see that, so that maybe not be it. It could also be reflecting a story of a great battle between rival families, rival clans, and it became part of like this mythology. But again, we don't know. We just know that this is how the Vanir are mentioned, and this like introduction of these two houses. So eventually, we mentioned Njord is swatched. The war ends. They all, the Vanir and the Aesir, all spit in a vat and decide, yep, we're going to keep this. And they use all their spit to make a dude named Kvasir, who, as I mentioned earlier, they do say he's the wisest of men, that does not mean God. And so it's unclear what this dude's role of, but we will talk more about him later.
Okay.
I want to talk about Rudolf Skemmick one more time.
Okay.
And his 2010 piece, Vanir Obituary, where he suggests that, as you remember earlier, I said that Skemmick said that Snorri made up the term Vanaheim as a counterpart for Asgard.
Yeah.
For Valhalla. Skemmick believes that Snorri also made up the Vanir. The concept of the Vanir totally made up by Snorri. Or at the least, like, he's the one that gave us the idea that it was another rival set of gods, that it was from a house, that they were trading it. Like, he says that he believes that there are only one group of deities. It was only ever just the Aesir, and that Snorri over-extrapolated the concept of the different deities coming from different places to make them completely different families.
Okay.
And this is a thought that he didn't come up with this theory. There was another scholar like prior to him that proposed it that he really agrees with. And this is a theory that like other scholars, like they also accept. So this isn't like some fringe thing. Yeah. Like this is a pretty like, okay, yeah, maybe. Not everyone is like on board with this theory. One scholar who is adamantly opposed to this is a scholar named Clive Tolley, who in 2011 published a defense of the Vanir, which goes deep. It cites all of the references to the Vanir that don't exist in Snorri's works, that come from the poetic Edda and things like that. And there are pretty few of them, to be sure. There's not a ton. But he totally presents evidence to suggest that just because there are few doesn't mean they never existed. And that it doesn't, and with the evidence that he has, it doesn't make sense to suggest that the Norse could never have recognized two separate groups of deities. And that this conclusion is dramatic, to say the least. Just a dramatic, like really leaping to, Skemmick really leapt to a conclusion here and perhaps missed a lot of other points, is what Tully says. But something he says is that the Vanir, the reason we maybe not have as much of the Vanir as we do for the Aesir is that because the Vanir are associated with magic, specifically really magic, and also more traditionally feminine concepts for not necessarily the Norse, but for the incoming European Christians.
Okay.
That would have really prioritized the, I'll just say his quote here. The Vanir are likely to have been involved in the most intimate and central aspects of human existence, as my analysis of their function shows. It may have been for this reason that Christian missionaries such as Saint Olaf, who's a saint famous for just not being into any of this pagan bullshit, were intent on their eradication, leaving us with so little information. If, as the Volspa, the seer's prophecy, intimates, the Vanir are particularly the, quote, sweet scent, the darlings of women, there may have been an even greater incentive for the new muscular and masculine Christianity to ensure their demise, as a cult fostered by the guardians of the home would be a serious threat to the spread of the new religion. So another thing we don't consider a lot is like, we have such few remnants of Norse mythology to reference, but we don't really often think about, hey, what about the ones that just didn't get recorded by Appen's, but were specifically and intentionally gotten rid of? Because we talk about how Snorri is so careful in his stuff to be like, no, big G God though. No, these are not gods. No, but Troy. Like so very careful because he recognizes that the church, capital C church, doesn't like this kind of thing. Yeah. Like he comes from a place where these stories are not forbidden, but not liked, not tolerated, often persecuted. They want them to be erased, right? This is a long tradition of the Christian church. Really, really doesn't like quote, competition.
Yeah.
So it is not completely implausible that perhaps we don't know enough about the Vanir because they represented something that was just completely intolerable to the missionaries and Christian leaders who were coming in at the time to try to spread this way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no answers to that, but I just thought, wow, what a bummer. What a bummer is that.
You
hate to see it. That made me sad. But as we said, the war with the Vanir ended with the swap of two gods, one of them being Njorn, who we mentioned earlier, he's the father of Freyr and Freya.
Uh-huh.
He may have been actually connected to, I mentioned earlier, also his possible wife was maybe Nerthus, who is an older Germanic fertility goddess, because their names both come from the same Proto-Germanic deity.
Mm-hmm.
And some theories actually suggest that this Nethys figure became Njorn because of how linguistically a gendered vowel used for the feminine fell out of use and became used for the masculine. And so the word just became masculine and just became a god. Other scholars say that it wasn't because of language and was specifically due to a shift of religious trends, a god becoming more favorable than a goddess.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually, it's also possible that maybe these two figures were once paired siblings, like Freyr and Freya. But I have no answers to any of that. What I do know is that he will survive Ragnarok and return to the Vanir, which means we can assume the Vanir survive Ragnarok. Not Frey, obviously. He gets killed.
Frey.
But, no one rejoins the Aesir. So
Aesir go fight to the death.
They all fight to death, and they don't make it back. When you ask, wait, why does Freya have all these? Whereas at Folkvangr, they're not mentioned as marching on the fields like we talked about. Odin's dudes show up. Maybe Freya's dudes just defend Vanaheimr, and that's why
the war could have been won if half the soldiers weren't going to fucking Folkvangr.
Maybe she's a war goddess who has every right to do what she wants.
I'm just saying. Could have used your help.
But also, okay, we talked about this in the Ragnarok episode, is that they're said to march on the battle with Odin, and then they are never mentioned again. We have just no idea what happens to... We assume they all die, but, we got nothing. I read a little bit about his Snorri's... Not Snorri. Well, what Snorri has to say about Njorn earlier. Mm-hmm. I think. Maybe I did. Maybe I edited that part out. Who's to say? Who's to say what I did? So Njorn swapped to help in the war. That's the first thing we know about him. Now, his second big story is that of his ill-fated marriage to the giant Skadi.
He had magnificent feet.
He had, exactly. I'm going to put a pin in that one because I feel like that's more of a Skadi myth, and we're going to talk about that when we talk about Jotunheim, because that's where she's from. Okay. So, but yes, we do know he had magnificent feet.
Wonderful feet.
He had a wife called Skadi, the daughter of Thiazi and the giants. Skadi wanted to live in the home that her father had owned up in the mountain Thunderhome, but Njord wanted to live near the sea. They came to an agreement that they would stay nine nights in Thunderhome, and then the next 3 at Notun, which is a big concession. 9 nights at her place, 3 nights at his.
I know, crazy.
Yeah, that's 12. We could do 6 and 6, but when you're
7 and 7, just week on, week off.
Right? Yeah. I guess I don't know how the Norse measured time.
I have no idea.
Yeah, right? But when Njord returned to Notun after the mountains, he said, "Hateful for me are the mountains. I was not long there, only 9 nights. The howling of wolves sounded ugly to me after the song of swans." Then Skadi said this, "Sleep I could not on seabeds for the screeching of the bird. That gull wakes me when from the wide sea he comes each morning." Then Skadi went to the mountains and lived in Thunderhome. She travels much on skis and carries a bow and shoots wild animals. I guess I'll save more of that for the Skadi one. But yeah, they just, they did that one time. They spent 9 nights at Skadi's place, 3 nights at Njord's place, and they both decided,
sucks.
I don't want to do this. And so they just aren't married anymore.
Live in different homes?
They just which is honestly very modern of them. You could just live in different houses and still have a relationship. The next thing about Njord, so that stuff is all mentioned in chapter 23 of the Gylfaginning. Chapter 24 is Frey and Freya. And the first sentence of that is, after this, Norn of Notun has 2 children. The son was called Frey and the daughter Freya. They are beautiful and powerful.
Who's their mom?
What a great question, DJ. Because...
Could it be Skadi?
It could be Skadi.
They spent 12 days together.
It 12 whole days together. I mean, if they could get in the mood between the howling of the wolves and the crying of the gulls.
They might have been able to. I don't know.
I don't know either. So it is interesting. So we know it's Norn came to the Aesir. Then he married Skadi. Then that didn't work out. And then he had 2 kids. That seems to be the order that Snorri is giving us here.
Yeah.
But it's slightly...
It seems like possibly the death of the ill treatment of Freya is what started the war.
Yes! So granted, maybe it was when I say it could be the same figure, maybe it was a figure who split off and became a more distinct element of Freya. Maybe, again, it's so very weird. We know so little. We only have these 1 versions, or sometimes 2 versions. Unlike other mythologies where you'll see dozens and dozens of different versions of these tales, and we can draw those more elaborate confusions.
Yeah.
So we jump to a poem called Skimnir's Journey, which is something we're going to cover more heavily when we get to Freya. But, because this is the dude I mentioned earlier, Freyr's servant.
Mm-hmm.
And once upon a time, all of a sudden, Freyr's just in a mood. And no one knows why. He's just in a weird mood. It's all weird. He's not talking to anyone. Skirnir was the name of Freyr's page. Njord asked him to go have a conversation with Freyr. Then Skadi said, "Get up now, Skir, and go and ask to speak with our son, and ask this, with whom the wise man is so terribly angry." Skirnir said, "Harsh words I expect from your son if I go talk to the young man."
Yeah, sounds like Scotty's the mom.
So that one, very clearly, Skadi is his mother. Because she straight up says, "Go talk to our son. He's in a mood."
But given the fact that you say that one means there's another one that contradicts it.
There is another one, and it's the one where all the drama happens. We revisit Loki's quarrel, where Loki just wants to talk shit about everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Loki has been talking shit at Freya, so the Njord steps in to defend his daughter. And then he's going to turn on, and then Loki decides, "I'm going to turn on you," and essentially says, "Be silent, Njord. You were sent from here eastwards as hostage to the gods. The daughters of Heimel used you as a piss pot and pissed in your mouth." Njord said, "That was my comfort when I, from far away, was sent as hostage to the gods. That I know fucking wild." Njord is like, "I won't let you flap me."
I'm a very big fan of Golden Shower.
Well, gold. "That I fathered that son whom no one hates and is thought as the protector of the Aesir." That son being Freyr. Loki said, "Stop now, Njord. Keep some moderation. I won't keep it a secret any longer. With your sister you got that son, though that's no worse than what might be expected." And then Tyr jumps in to spin Freyr. Loki goes after. But this, we're told that actually Freyr and Freyr are the children of Norn by his nameless sister.
I given the fact that it seems like the Norse were very adverse to incest, I'm pretty sure it's just Loki talking shit, saying, yeah, you just had a fucking kid with your sister. You're a fucking freak, dude.
This is what's wild. Okay, because when I was doing my research, when I was going all around trying to follow sources, every place mentions first the thing with the sister. When you talk about who Njord's children or like Frey and Freya's parentage, it is the first thing they cite is it's Njord with his first wife, nameless sister. And the thing I said earlier about like Nethys maybe being the wife and that coming from like the Germanic thing of this other goddess and maybe being a sister. But so that's where that comes from. Because Loki doesn't say a name. He just says with your sister. And no other place is a sister even mentioned. So I was like, but this other poem straight up says Skadi is his mother. He was married to Skadi. They didn't work out, but they were married for a while. So I really, really, but everywhere you look, the first thing they're going to cite is the sister thing. As if that is the actual truth. And this is a weird, like, oh, this is like one poem mentions this, but every other place will mention the sister. But that's not true. The only place the sister is mentioned is in this one.
Yeah.
And so the thing I really, really don't understand.
Like every single god that Loki insults, he's like, yeah, you fucked your sibling.
Yes, and because he'll throw that same insult about Freya in a second.
Yeah.
Or if it's the goddess, he'll say, "That's not what you said last night."
Yeah.
Like, and so I could not figure out.
Sounds like Loki
Loki
just BMing, dude.
just
Like he's just
stirring up
talking shit in game
just
chat.
trying to,
That's all he's
talking
doing.
to things that'll like upset them,
Yeah.
right? And so I could not figure out, because I even looked up, like, why do we think what Loki's saying is true? And I found one place where it's like, well, we have no reason to think Loki is lying, so we can assume all the things he's saying are true.
It's Loki.
But it's Loki.
Like,
Flip side, though, like, the truth hurts. Like, Loki rarely... He does lie. He disguises himself. He didn't want to bring Baldur back. Like, the one truthful thing we know he says is when he talks to
Trickery
Frigg and says he's the reason that Baldur didn't come back.
Yeah.
Which is a thing another poem says. That's the only thing that is, like, confirmed in other poems.
Yeah.
This... Right, because when the reason Nord steps in to defend Freya, it's because Loki said, oh, you fucked your brother. Like...
He's like, don't say that. That's not cool.
That's
well,
such
you fucked your sister.
Yeah, right. Oh, you, of course you defend your daughter. You did the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I think when we get to Loki, I'm going to need to really dig deep and figure out, why do we believe Loki? Why is his word apparently the thing, especially in this matter?
Oh, because they got so mad.
They got mad. And it's not just because he's saying...
But it's like...
That doesn't mean it's true. It means that, what the fuck? Why would you say that about me? That's a crazy thing to fucking say.
Again, in game chat, people would get mad. It's like probably not anymore, but people would get mad when you said, yeah, I fucked your mom last night.
Yeah.
That's obviously not true. This person lives in Ohio and I'm in Boise, right?
But also, what a wild thing to say.
Yeah, but it's still
what a wildly disrespectful thing to say. Of course I'm going to be upset with you just disrespecting me and my family.
Like you're just spouting lies.
Yeah, you're just trying to get me upset, which is what Loki's doing here.
Yeah, you could definitely get mad at lies.
Mm-hmm. So like that's really the thing where it's like, I don't understand. And again, I don't know much about, like, we're hobbyists, right? Like, this is the thing I can access on the internet. And sometimes I can crack into journals that have been, like, left unlocked, right? And when I get to, like, Trolley's thing, I found his and I was able to, like, read the whole thing.
Yeah.
But it is really perplexing because it feels like the reason we believe him is because it's the most nasty versions of the story. And usually it's the ones that make the goddesses look bad. And it feels like, hey, was there a motive for why we decided this was going to be the version we would call true? Because it creates a kind of narrative.
Sorry.
No, that's the theme I thought.
Yeah, I wonder if it also stems from the fact that it's like every other pantheon has this like incest thing. So it's kind of like, you're like, yeah, it probably was.
But yeah, which is wild because like, but there's such a point where it's not.
Yeah, it's like they almost go out of their way. It feels like
to be like, we don't do that here.
Yeah,
and so I don't know. That's the thing I have where I just keep coming up against like, but Scotty is specifically named, was married to Nord and said to be Frey's mother in this other poem. And also, that poem is before, in the order of the Poetic Edda, Skirnir's journey comes first.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make it more important, except we know the Sibyl's prophecy is considered the most important. And so I don't know if they're ordered the way they're ordered in the Codex Regius. I don't know how that's recorded. I don't know why. But if we're just going in terms of like which is mentioned more often, they're both mentioned the once, but one's mentioned first, and one's not coming from a known liar. One is coming from the mouth of character.
Yeah.
So that's my last thought.
Directly from Scotty, too.
From Scotty, who says, go talk to my son.
Yeah.
Adopted son? Yeah, maybe, but except she definitely divorced his dad pretty soon, so, like, after 9 days, it sounds like?
Yeah, I don't think it's adopted.
Yeah. And then it's also just more complicated. It's like, oh, a nameless sister. Also nameless first wife, also sister, which again is a thing that, like, no, we don't have the other gods doing that.
Yeah.
Like you said, I think it's like maybe just be like, oh, yeah, incest is common, so it must be this one. Or like, we just like this version the best because it makes this pantheon, this culture look more, quote, barbaric.
Yeah.
This is going to be, I'm going to have to make sure I start researching the episode so far advanced because I know that's the thing I'm going to deep dive in and just obsess over. And like really be like, what? Why? Someone tell me why we decide this is true and how you decide this is true because I don't think it's right. Those are the Norn's biggest things. And the next biggest thing is his two kids who we've mentioned. But I ain't going to put a pin in them, in Freya and Folkvangr, because this set of research notes ended up at 7 pages long. And DJ, dear listener, here's a sneak peek I'm going to get real mad at Rick Riordan in the next episode.
It would have been a 3-hour episode had we not done this.
So we're just going to do this. But yeah, just heads up. I have disagreed with Mr. Riordan on some notes. I've commented on I don't care for the way he portrays his goddesses for XYZ reasons, but this is the first time that I am like, ooh, I hate what you did here.
This was actually wrong.
This was, but more on that. More on that later. Now, DJ, do you have...
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything either, which is almost like, oh, I got stuff for Freya for the next one, but I don't have anything here.
Could be, and I guess let me do a quick Google search real quick on 2 games that I know visits all these realms.
There is a game called Valheim, which is very clearly a game that is taking Valhalla and Vanaheim and putting them together. But since that game is about a place where you go, it's another place you go, or that Vikings go when they die. That's not Valhalla. We're saving that for our guest who will be joining us for the Folkvangr episode.
Vanaheim appears to be in God of War Ragnarok. It's very pretty.
Oh, I love that.
Okay.
Hilda Ellis Davidson, I didn't write it in my notes, but I did like this, that she theorized that Vanaheim was maybe closer to the underworld because it had more to do with the spiritual nature of the Vanir. And I couldn't find any way where she was drawing that conclusion, but she knows more about this than I do. So sure, babes, go off. She's an English folklorist. I want to be a folklorist. If I had the means, I would move to Santa Barbara and attend a school where I could get a master's in mythology and folklore. They don't offer online classes anymore. If I'd gotten on this during pandemic, though.
And I cannot find out if Vanaheim is in Asgard's Wrath.
Maybe. Who knows? I mean, people who played Asgard's Wrath would know. But that's not DJ.
Well, you know, I probably would have been playing it on and off throughout these last couple months, but I have been down an eye.
You've been down an
eye. Who don't know.
Yes. We shared? Did we share about this? Maybe it was on the Patreon.
I got glass in my eye.
Content warning.
Big old cut right there. Just in my eye. Lens isn't damaged, thankfully. But the stitches have been in there since April.
Yeah, too long?
Probably could have been taken out at the start of this month.
Yeah.
This month, July. But I'm getting it out in 2 weeks from when this episode comes out.
Yeah, well, that's really far. Why are they still in your... Okay, we have to leave.
Sucks, dude. But yeah. once they're out, I will continue playing that game.
Hooray! Maybe you'll have more to share.
Absolutely.
You'll come back and be like, Darren, we got to redo these episodes because I've got 6 things from these past episodes I could have talked about.
It'll be a bonus episode.
That'll be fun. I'd like that. All right. Well, it occurs to me now that I didn't read Norn's description from Ship of the Dead, but I think that's okay. He's a cool grandpa. He's got nice feet. He saves them.
He's got nice feet. He's a big fan of them. He loves his feet.
He loves, well, when it's your
He's very proud of his feet.
When it's your best feature.
Yeah. He's very proud of his feet.
He sends them to talk to Scotty. And they still have, we learn, he still sends her flowers.
Yeah.
And that's very sweet.
She thinks of him fondly.
Fondly. Like, listen, it's not like they ended on bad terms where he,
they're just
cheated
like,
on her.
Incompatible.
They're just incompatible. And honestly, I love that for the, okay, no, I'm trying to wrap up the episode, but I, kind of love that.
It's really fun.
That we have this god who's very important. His trade helped end this war and is established. He's the father of his very important deities. And that we see an example of this important deity who was married, was in a relationship where the two just didn't work out and just parted ways.
Yeah.
And we can, again, I don't know, this is a hobbyist, feels like if that story is present, that can't be an uncommon cultural practice.
Yeah. To
be able to, no fault divorce. And again, really I don't know. We have not gotten to any sort of research on the Nordic people. I don't know. But we tell certain stories for a reason. If there's this big story where it's they got married and they just hated each other's houses. And that's fine.
Yeah. Really funny.
All right. Well, hey, dear listeners, if y'all have any great examples of Vanir, I bet Assassin's Creed, the Vanir show up. Or mentioned.
It's the Isu, right?
Yeah, they're just all they're probably just the same.
It's all the Isu.
Yeah, it just would fall with Skimmic's theory.
No. I was trying to think if one of the webtoons that I've been reading has Vanir show up. And then I think they've used Vanir once. Maybe it's the name of the system that the main character got access to.
Oh, but it's just used as a word.
Well,
and
it's
not
the Aesir and the Vanir war is actually, I think, happening, but the Vanir aren't really the Vanir. It's like Hel, Loki.
Oh, okay.
They count as the Vanir.
Yeah, but
I
they're
could
not.
be wrong on that. I don't know. It's a webtoon. They're taking creative liberties.
Oh, that's fair.
And,
That's fair.
The system that showed up for Hunters was the Aesir system.
Okay.
And when he got the eye, this is the I obtained a mythic item where he got the Eye of Odin. When he got that and got sent back in time, found out he was the great enemy that's going to overthrow the Vanir and pretty much kick off Ragnarok.
Oh, yeah.
His system turned into... I don't think it's the Vanir. I might be wrong on that. It's something else. It's just not the Aesir system anymore.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, dear listener, if you know any examples that we missed, absolutely hit us up. Shorter episode, but otherwise, as you said, would have been 3 hours long, and that's too long. It's too long for Darien to edit. So
It's a long episode.
But if you're sitting here thinking, no, but I crave more content, DJ, where can they find it?
Patreon.com/Music Mythology. You better believe it. It's $5 a month for just a whole mess of content. Pretty much the same amount of episodes of bonus content there as there is on the main feed.
Plus over 20 Remyth episodes for our podcast hero tiers to enjoy, where we deep dive.
10 bones.
Yeah, 10 bones. And that is where we deep dive into stories that are retelling a myth and just really, really dig into them a little deeper than we usually get to, than when we're just listing them off at the end of an episode.
We haven't done it in a while, but we also do sometimes Muse's movie night.
Yeah, we fell out of that during the strikes last year. We just talk about a movie.
Yeah, we just talk about a movie because why
that's
not?
for everybody.
It's fun.
Yeah, we should start doing that again, and that could be free for even followers.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Speaking of Remyth episodes, I know I said we were going to talk about Emily. We haven't gotten to schedule her yet. I think I just listened to Go the Distance, the Twisted Tale myself for the first time.
Now you want to talk about it?
Can we just do that as a Remyth episode? And just really, because I made lists of everything, and I'm just like, you would just do it again?
Yeah. Okay.
It's been a couple years. Like, yeah, Go the Distance was the first one we did back in 2010. It's been 4 years. We can revisit.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right.
I'll re-listen to it too.
Fuck yeah. All right. So if you want to listen to that, throw us $10 on Patreon. And honestly, you can just do it for 1 month and listen to everything and cancel. I won't judge you. I'll still have $10.
Exactly, right?
Dear listener, we'll be back in your ears on Tuesday, August 13th to talk about Frey and Freyr. And until then, don't be like Zeus.
Don't be like Zeus.
Muses of Mythology is created and hosted by Darien and DJ Smart. It's edited by Darren Smart. The show is produced by Darien and DJ Smart, as well as
Tim O'Connor, The Crystal Conman, Nicholas Miller. Our music is Athens Festival by Martin Hain, and our cover art is by Audrey Miller. You can find her on Instagram at Bombshell Nutshell Art.
Want more Muses of Mythology? Support the show on Patreon. Just $1 gets you exclusive bonus content. Get more at patreon.com/Muses of Mythology.
You can also support the show by leaving a review at lovethepodcast.com/Muses of Mythology, or tell a friend why you love the show.
Don't forget to check out all of our episodes and episode transcripts at musesofmythology.com.
Thanks for listening.